Hi, this is Laura Trout, and tonight we're going to be going over the Advanced Writing Workshop. This is a new session for the summer of 2013, and it's for participants that have been through the other writing workshops, the robust models, the activity structure, and so forth, and just need a little jump start for this summer to do some writing projects. For this training, you will need the handouts that go with this workshop, because you're going to be working through the activities like a participant at times. I'll ask you to pause the recording, do an activity, and then come back when you're finished. So if you don't have those handy, go ahead and hit pause and get those printed out or ready, and we'll move on. So like I said, this is going to be a review session of the previous writing workshops. So you'll review how to write content and process goals. You'll look at robust models again briefly. You'll again go over the learning cycle and how to write questions for explore and concept invention, and application. And we'll show another example of the author scaffold. So starts with a warm-up. This is the warm-up question. During the presentation or during the session, the participants are going to be building an activity that addresses how to use commas in compound sentences. So we just want to know how much people know about using commas in compound sentences in this rule. So you'll have them look at these questions and select what they feel is the correct answer. I'll give you a second to do that. And then you would probably have participants vote on their favorite response, and maybe even give with their fingers how confident they are of their answer. So a 0 would be I totally guessed, and a 5 fingers would be I'm 100% sure of the rule. It's nice to ask a few participants to justify their answer, and you may have somebody who really knows the rule and can explain it, and then when the next slide comes up, it'll make more sense. So this next slide is animated usually. The rule here shows what the actual usage correctly is, and it goes through each answer why D is the correct answer, because there's both a subject and a verb in both parts of the compound sentence, and that's what we're really looking for, is we need two independent clauses. So again, you might pull this out of the participants, ask if anybody knows how you know an independent clause, and so forth, get some participation. So the first task for the participants is to decide on a learning objective. In the participant handout, there are a set of proposed learning objectives for commas in compound sentences activity, and as a group, they need to decide the best one and be prepared to justify their choice. You want to push pause now and take a few minutes or a few seconds to choose one for yourself. At the end of that, you'll ask for group feedback. Which one do they feel is the best answer? Most will say either the third bullet, that students will evaluate a sentence, or they might say the last bullet, being able to combine two sentences into an independent clause. So here are the proposed learning objectives. Just have some conversation. Hopefully somebody will bring up the idea of higher thinking skills and Bloom's taxonomy, that evaluating is a higher order thinking than just stating the rule or knowing how to use the rule. And you might also mention that in the normal, working of kids writing or reading or editing each other's work, we want them to be able to evaluate a sentence and determine if it needs a comma, not just be able to combine two sentences together. So this is a reminder of learning objectives. They should be student-centered, which most of those were, because they said the student will. They need to be specific. They need to use action verbs, and this is where the Bloom's taxonomy comes in, and they need to be measurable. So the next thing that you'll talk about is identifying a process skill objective. So just remind the participants of the 7 areas that POGIL tries to focus on for process skills. and then ask them as a group to identify which of these 7 categories each of the proposed process skills are in. So all of the process skills that are on their sheet are well-written process skills that could be a possibility for this activity. They just need to categorize them as critical thinking, information processing, and of course you're going to get a lot of overlap on this, and there's going to be really rich discussion in the teams. You'll want to report out some of this, and it's okay if there's overlap. So you may want to put numbers up on the board, number the proposed objectives, and have people list their answers and then compare several teams, however you want to report that out. So here are the proposed objectives. Again, you can put the letters up on the board and have people write down what they categorize them as. All right, the next step in a writing would be coming up with an assessment question, and this really helps you focus in on what your model might eventually look like. What do you want the student to be able to do? So there are several assessment questions proposed, and the participants will look at the 3 questions, A, B, and C, and decide which one best fits the learning objective that you're looking at. So take a minute to do that now. And again, you will have people report out and try and figure out which one is the best answer. Let's see, the best answer there is B, or for the proposed assessment questions, I believe, and ask them to justify. In this conversation, hopefully somebody will bring up the idea that you don't want too many other comma rules involved in this unless it's like a unit ending question or something. But you also want to put in the common mistakes. So the distractors are really important in an assessment question because you want to address the misconceptions for the student around this rule. And that's a key point when we get to building a robust model, that you need to build the misconceptions in as well. So hopefully that will come out in the conversation. The next piece is the author scaffold. So let's say we've chosen this question, this assessment question. Which of these sentences below does not properly use a comma? How do you think about that? What's the first question that you ask yourself? Okay, so first question, does the sentence contain 2 independent clauses? You need to know what an independent clause is. Does it have a subject and a verb? You need to know that verbs describe an action. You need to know that a subject is the who or what that is doing the verb. You also need to know something about conjunctions. A comma needs to be before a conjunction, and, but, or, nor, yet. And just because a conjunction is present doesn't necessarily mean a comma is needed. That's one of the main misconceptions about this punctuation rule. So point out to the participants that this author scaffold really helps you break down the learning objective into what does the student need to know first. And you can also identify the prerequisites. So we can assume that at this point in the year, the students know that a verb is an action and the subject is the who or what. So we can assume that we're starting from that piece of information, and then we just need to build our way up. So we'll get to the robust model. There are 3 proposed models for the commas and compound sentences activity. The participants need to look at those models and again reach a group consensus about which one is the best, and more importantly, be able to justify their choice. So I'll give you a few minutes. You can push pause to look at that one. All right, welcome back. So hopefully you have chosen model B for that one, and you can justify your choice. Point out there the use of misconceptions, that there are good distractors in the sentences that require commas. So there are places where they use a conjunction, but there's not a comma in there. It also focuses only on one rule. Model B, oh, I messed that up. Model A is the right one. So Model A is the correct one. And so you have conjunctions in there that don't need a comma and so forth. All right, so reviewing the characteristics of a robust model, you need to have data for them to analyze. You need to have examples and non-examples. You need to make the students confront their misconceptions. It needs to be appropriate for your student population and avoid forming new misconceptions. All right, at this point, we'll want to focus on the learning cycle. So you could, if you have time, ask the participants to write a couple of exploration questions and just see what they come up with. But there are several here for you to go over with the participants and talk about, that this should be a convergent question or directed. It should be very easily identified in the model. Then move on to concept invention. What kind of questions should we be asking here? Again, give the participants a few minutes to take a minute to write down some questions and share in their groups if you have time. And then there are a couple here that you can share with them. And then finally, application. Ask them to take a few minutes to write some questions, share them out in reporting, and show them these examples. All right, so this is the debriefing. Share with a partner one portion of the session that was most valuable in helping you be an author, what part you are still uncertain about, and what insights you may have gained today about writing POGIL activities. And of course, having some sharing of that is a great idea. So I'm hoping that you learned something about doing this session. Good luck this summer.